God bless you. I'm Pastor Derek McRae, and welcome to another episode of Changing Experiences with Pastor Derek. I believe that you're going to be blessed by this show that we're going to have today. Changing Experiences is about real people sharing real stories and allowing unprecedented access into their lives as living epistles for the glory of God. Changing Experiences is an unscripted opportunity to allow God to speak through the real lives of my guests. Today, we will be focusing on forgiveness and restoration. I'm telling you now, you don't want to miss this show. Call your friends and your neighbors and tell them we're on the air now. Changing Experiences, Pastor Derek. We'll be right back. God bless you again, and thank you so much for joining in with us again with another episode of Changing Experience with Pastor Derek. I am super excited about this next guest that we're about to bring on. He's making tremendous impact, not only in the Central Florida area, but he's also making tremendous impact in the state of Florida and all across our nation. Please welcome and join with me, Mr. Desmond Meade, who is our guest today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Pastor Derek, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Man, thank you for being on the show, man. You're doing some fantastic things all across the country. You're literally leading the efforts. You're making change, man. You're really being that person who's standing out on the front lines for so many individuals across the nation. Just tell us a little bit more about Desmond Meade.
Well, I am the current state director for the Live Free campaign, which is part of Faith in Florida. I'm also the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and the Florida chair for the Black Men's Roundtable for the Florida Coalition on Black Civic Participation. So you can see I have a lot of titles on me right now.
Man, I mean, you're doing a lot, and those titles, I mean, it really points to some leading efforts, and that's the reason why we're able to say that you're making so much change and so much progress in our communities. But take us back and tell us that it wasn't always like this for Desmond Meade.
No, it wasn't, Pastor Derek. It wasn't. Back in 2005, I found myself in South Florida, standing in front of railroad tracks, waiting on a train to come so I can jump in front of it.
Wow.
At that time, I was homeless, I was unemployed, I was hooked on drugs. I was recently released from incarceration. I didn't have a penny in my pocket. I didn't have a shelter or anything like that, and I was tired. I was tired. I was raised in a Christian family, and I knew that my mother didn't raise me to be in that position, but there I was, and I wanted to end it all. But by the grace of God, the train never came. And I crossed those tracks, and I walked a couple blocks and checked myself into a substance abuse treatment facility. And, after completing that in about 4 months, I went and lived in a homeless shelter. And it was while I was living there that I decided to go back to school and get a degree. And I enrolled at Miami-Dade College in Dade County. And one thing led to another, and, this past May, well, actually May of 2014, I graduated with my law degree from Florida International University College of Law.
Man, that's a tremendous testimony about going through the cycles of life, but also finding yourself coming out of cycles of life. And it's amazing to see how God can take our most darkest moments and also birth something that is just beautiful in the midst of it all. And so your life story, your transformation, just how God has worked on you and how he's turned your life around. That is definitely encouraging to other individuals. And so we find now that you have a great passion now. You have a great passion, and you're doing some great things for people in our community. So talk about some of the great things that you're doing right now.
Well, Pastor Derek, I think that, God takes us through some things in order to prepare us to be of greater service to him. And so even though at that time it might seem like I was having it rough, whatever, now I can look back and I understand that he was just preparing me. And as a result of that preparation, as a result of me allowing him to work through me, I'm now involved in reducing gun violence, in the state. I'm now involved in banning the box, making it easier for people with felony convictions to get jobs. I'm also involved with getting them their right to vote back, as far as, because, Florida is one of only 3 states that permanently takes away that right to vote from people convicted of felony offenses. And I'm also involved in trying to uplift our young black men and get them more civically engaged. But I think the proudest thing that I do is I'm honored to work with congregations of different faith and really getting them to look, through their ministry, through a social justice lens, to be more engaged with not just what's going on inside of the four walls, but to actually go outside those walls and into the communities and connect with the people that's out there that's suffering.
Man, it's amazing to hear just how well, literally, God has literally connected you for one. He's done some phenomenal things in your life. He's put you in front of some great people. The passion that you have, where does that passion, where's it drawn from?
The passion that I have actually came from an experience during my treatment days, when I was in drug treatment. And it came from really discovering what God's purpose for my life was, or actually what God's purpose for all of our lives was. And, it was an incident where, I was able to share my experience with someone, and it caused them to experience like a paradigm shift. It caused them to really rethink the way they looked on life. And I remember when that individual told me that it was something that I said that caused them to change, something happened inside of me, and I felt a joy that I never felt before. Looking back at it now, I could tell you it was a joy that I was searching for all of my life and didn't even know I was looking for it. And that joy was what God's purpose was for, and that was for me to give back. And that, I'm going to tell you, ever since I got a hold of that spirit, I just can't stop. It's just that I'm living out a dream. No matter what circumstance I may be in, no matter what the situation is, I know that as long as I'm doing his work, I'm going to be okay.
And that's an amazing place to be, understanding that God's hand is on you, understanding what purpose is, and just seeing how God is a God of second chances, and more than just second chances. He's a God of a third chance, a fourth chance. He's just a God of another chance, I like to say. And just seeing that God can turn anything around. And I think that's what so many people miss out on. They miss out on the fact that God is able to turn any situation around. No matter how dark it is, no matter how dim it may seem to be right now, God's ability to shift things, to change things, is just transformable. I mean, it literally transcends, it turns things around, it elevates us to the next level. And when it does, you've mastered in what is supposed to happen after God has transitioned us out of positions. He healed you, he delivered you for you to come and to give back to the community, to the populations, to empower other young men, to let them know that some of the choices that you might have made, it's not necessary to walk down those paths. And so you're partnering a lot with churches, and you're partnering a lot with different other faiths. And I'm reminded that you did a big event sometimes last year, and when you brought this race reconciliation, you was bringing all the different clergies together, and we saw Episcopalians, we saw Pentecostals, we saw Baptists and Methodists, we saw them all come together, even the Catholic. We saw them all come together, and literally when we came together, we saw just an empowerment of principles, not even about our procedures in our church, but it was just about the end of the message context. What are we here for? How do you find that churches, are churches really crossing those lines of denomination? Are they crossing those lines and saying, you know what, it's more about what God wants more than it is about our own personal agendas?
Well, Pastor Derek, I really do believe that, churches are now crossing that line. But the only thing is, I think that now they're forced to cross that line as opposed to crossing that line on their own. Especially when you look around and see what's happening in our community over the last year or so. I think the churches are now feeling that they're compelled to act, but this is something that should naturally occur. I think that, when you talk about, in my experience, when you talk about the role of the church and you talk about that great commandment that Jesus gave us, and that was to go out into the world and preach the gospel and healing the sick, I think we kind of strayed away from that in a sense and got a little bit more too concerned with what was happening internally and not outside in the world. But when you have people that's dying in the streets every day, when you have people that are getting arrested and abused every day, when you have these incidents of racial injustice or these racist attacks on innocent people, it forces the church to really step up. And I'm encouraged to see what I'm seeing. I mean, we did the Faith and Race Symposium. We also had what we call the Healing Communities event, where we had churches of all denominations come together to just learn about the criminal justice system and how it applies to people that are coming back into our churches, you know, that were incarcerated or have been impacted by crime. You know, and so it was a beautiful experience just to see so many denominations just come together.
I mean, it's amazing to see how God has a way of pulling us together, how he has a way of literally getting us focused on what is the main thing. And as you said, it's nothing new. It should have always been part of our principles of what we do. We should always be about changing communities, about changing lives, about working to heal the sick and to make the gospel known into all the world. And so we are super excited about the work that you're doing. And we're getting ready to come back right after this break. But we're going to be talking a little bit more with Desmond Meade. And we're going to get into another discussion that's going to be dealing with the factor of after those are returning back to our communities from prisons and from jails, how is America set up to receive them back? And so we're going to be talking about, is forgiveness even real when it comes to our country and our nation? We'll be back right after this. God bless you. I'm super excited about this guest that's getting ready to come. I want you to stay tuned right after this break. Stephanie Wool is coming. She's singing Walls Fall Down.
Said it was amazing tonight. We were just talking about positivity. You know how just keep yourself out of negative situations. If somebody's your friend, you have their back.
Tonight's Bible study was awesome, informative, right to the point, showing that God can do anything but fail.
Pleasures, greed, and all our lust can't hit you, 'cause we're too busy trying to shun you, building mansions filled with pride, loving everything that will destroy our lives. I'm stepping out, running from this mode. Rip off the blindfold so I can see clearly. I'm walking tall, heading to that goal. Yes, I can with your power over me. I'm gonna break down these walls. I can see them tearing down, and I know that we can win. The Lord who's on our side. Come on and break down these walls. Take back our identity. In Him we know that we are free. So rejoice in victory. As the walls fall, hypnotizing. Too deep, can't walk away, telling lies to steal your joy. Oh, heart of stone, He plans to take control. I'm stepping out, running from this mode. Rip off the blindfold. so I can see clearly. Oh, yes, I can with your power over me. Let's set the captives free. I'm gonna break down these walls. I can see them tearing down, and I know that we can win with the Lord who's on our side. Come on and break down these walls. Take back our identity. In Him we know that we are free. So rejoice in victory. As the walls fall down, walls fall down. Strongholds broken, strongholds broken. Walls fall down, walls fall down. See them falling, see them falling. Walls fall down, walls fall down. Strongholds broken, strongholds broken. Walls fall down, walls fall down. See them falling, see them falling.
My gosh, I know that you were blessed by that song sung by Stephanie Woe, Walls Fall Down. What a powerful song with powerful lyrics. I want you to stay tuned with us as we come back and continue our discussion with Mr. Desmond Meade, talking about forgiveness and restoration. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning back in with us here at Change Experiences with Pastor Derek. We are here joined with our special guest, Mr. Desmond Meade, and we're talking about some real engaging discussions about changing our communities, as well as we want to get into discussion talking about second chances. Desmond, thank you again for being with us today. Talking a little bit in the break, talking about second chances. And just a question, do you believe that our country, do you believe our culture is set up to be a second chance culture?
Pastor Derek, unfortunately, we're not. You know, while we might claim that by words, our actions are totally opposite. You know, we always hear that America, United States, is the land of opportunity, the land of second chances. You know, but in principle, you know, the system is set up to not give you a second chance, especially around people who are convicted of felonies. And so what happens is that once a person has done their time or served their time in prison, when they get home, they can't get a job. They can't get housing. They can't vote. They're ostracized by their community. You know, these are not actions that's conducive to saying that we're giving you a second chance. Even in some cases, a lot of these people who are convicted of felonies can't even get food stamps throughout the state. So you can't eat, can't work, can't live where you want to live. I mean, what else is left for you to do?
You're forced to go back almost into crime.
Pretty much.
And I see that so often that happens. We find that after the judge has done the sentencing, and sometimes it makes me even question the criminal justice system, because after they've done the sentencing, the question becomes, are you sentencing me for correction? Because I hear correctional institutions. So are you sentencing me for correction, or are you sentencing me for punishment? And then when I come off of my punishment, you're still going to punish me. And we're finding that so many individuals, like you said, we're finding repeat offenders. And repeat offenders, I don't think they're repeating because they decide that jail is the place or prison is the place that they want to be. As much as, like you said, so much is blocking us. So much is blocking them when it comes to homes, far as certain communities they can't even live in. And then you find that they're being blocked also so many times when it comes to jobs. And when they do find one, usually it's the lower paying jobs that can't properly satisfy or even provide for their families. And I didn't know until you just said now about the food stamp issue as well. So if a man can't work, a man can't have safe neighborhoods to stay stay in, and can't also have food to eat, we automatically, our nature takes us into survival mode. And we start looking to see, what can I do to survive? And oftentimes, that survival mode is not beneficial to the culture or civilization for us, which allows us to be landed back in prison. But I have a whole different theory when it comes to that anyway, because of the fact that I even look at prisons, especially now that so many of them are private owned, it's big business. And it's big business at the hand of individuals' lives. And I think that's a challenging place to be. And so I really wonder, are we really a forgiving nation, or do we say it to really make ourselves feel good about it? We want to say that, we forgive, but we don't forgive. We don't really forgive and forget. We never allow you to be restored back into your actual place that you were before you made your immature mistakes.
Well, that's very interesting, Pastor Derek, because I think our nature, by nature, we are a forgiving people. However, because we're not involved in policy, the policy is what's not forgiving. And so while we might, believe in giving someone a second chance, here in Florida, we have almost 2 million people who can't vote, who can't serve on a jury, who can't run for office. I mean, that's more people than the population of over 15 states or the population of over 90 countries. Now, when they did their studies, and we look at the amount of money that is spent in incarceration as opposed to education, you see a vast difference. Florida spends maybe around $18,000 per person to incarcerate them, and allocate maybe around $4,000 or $5,000 to educate a child.
Wow, that's big.
Now, who gets that money? A lot of times it's private prison. The public don't benefit from it. We do believe in second chances, but because we allow policies like the one in Florida to exist, which by chance is a policy that came out of the Reconstruction era. It's a Jim Crow policy to keep African Americans from voting, but we allow that to still exist today. Even though we may be forgiven in heart, the policy is not, and that's something that we need to do.
So how do we change the policies?
That's a great question, Pastor Derek. It reminds me of a story. Michelle Alexander, she wrote The New Jim Crow, and I remember I was on a panel with her, and she was telling me about how she was speaking with returning citizens about a church that fed people, a church that gave them clothes. And she asked them, said, that would be a great church for you to join. And they told her, no, we would never join that church. And when she asked them why, they told her that church, or the church, is the one place where they feel the most shame.
So they're saying they feel that churches produce the most shame.
That's where they felt the most shame.
Okay.
And so what that speaks to is that in order for us to change policies, right, we have to first change how we look at people who are convicted of felony offenses. That's the first thing that needs to change. Instead of looking down on them. Some of the greatest leaders in the Bible, guess what? Committed crimes. Moses committed murder. Paul, his name used to be Saul. And if he did the things today that he did back then,
so true,
we'd be screaming for him to be underneath the jail.
So true, so true.
But what happens is that when a person is once labeled a felon or an ex-felon, then they're kind of like ostracized and they're forced to wear a scarlet letter of shame. When we look at them as somebody less than us, then we're not as compelled to change the policies that would make their lives easier.
Question for you then. Do you believe that our society believes in the correctional process?
I don't think society believes in the process. I think at one point it used to be a rehabilitative system. Now it's more retributive. It's all about retribution. And in general, I think the public feels that the system is unfair. We know that African Americans or minorities are unfairly targeted. But there's another interesting fact. The growing amount of women who are being incarcerated and convicted of felony. That is the fastest growing demographics of individuals who are incarcerated.
I've been hearing a lot about that, and especially now you're finding a lot more mentor efforts that have started to go towards what can we do for our young girls, because we know we have so many things, Save Our Sons and different types of rites of passages for young men. But I'm starting to see a lot more for the young ladies, because it is true. It's a growing number of females who are becoming incarcerated and becoming repeated offenders as well. And it's amazing to see how it's kind of shifting.
And it's very costly. I mean, when you look at it, taking the head of the household away from the family is one thing. But when you're taking the mother out of the family as well, we're just setting ourselves up for more problems. Who's raising the kids? You know, who's providing that stability in the home? And so it's very imperative that we understand that when we go to change policies that impact the lives of returning citizens, that's what we call them, that it's not just to benefit them, it's to benefit us. You know, the money that the state of Florida spends to incarcerate an individual could be reallocated to educate our children, to give us better parks, to increase public safety, hire more police officers or firefighters, rather than going into the pockets of private prison companies. You know, it could be be reinvested into our communities. And so it's very important to understand that there's no me without you.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
In the last 30 seconds of this interview, Des, can you talk to me about what we need to do in order to bring a change?
I think the first thing that we need to do in order to bring a change, I think, is understanding, I think one of the greatest chapters of the Bible is 1 Corinthians 13, you know, where Jesus talks about that in spite of your many talents, you know, in spite of your ability to sing, lay in hands, prophesying, if you don't have love in your heart,
that's right,
all of that doesn't matter.
That's right.
You know, and I think that we really need to focus on that and understand that no matter where we are in life, you know, we could always be that person that we look down upon. I was once that crackhead. I was once that homeless guy. I was once that convict that people look down on, that I even look down on my own self. But knowing that through the power of God, that he can take anyone, the lowest among us, to bring about great change is very important, and it really compels us to understand that we have to show people love. We have to show that prostitute, that drug addict, that returning citizen love. And it's with us showing them love that the love of God is manifested through us,
yes,
and our lives become so much better.
That's good. But I so appreciate you coming on today, Des, and joining in with us and just giving us some powerful information, just reminding us of the power of forgiveness, the power of love. And as you're watching today, I pray that you have been inspired by the testimony of what God has done for Desmond, as well as understanding that there are people in your community, people in your neighborhood, people that might even be in your family that have gone through the very same situation. Let's help them to remove that scarlet of shame. Let's help them to understand that no matter where you've been, it's not too much for God to bring you back into a place of forgiveness and restoration. And so let's practice what we also expect of ourselves. If we want to be forgiven and restored, let's practice forgiving and restoring. And I believe that together we can make this world a better place. God bless you all. Thank you again, Desmond. How can people reach out to you very quickly again? How can people reach out to you?
People can find me easily on Facebook and Twitter at Desmond Meade, and Instagram as well.
He's covered all the social media sites, so make sure you reach out to Desmond Meade, doing some powerful things. God bless you again, and thank you so much for joining us again with this episode of Changing Experiences with Pastor Derek. Have a fantastic week.